On the forgotten fringe of the galaxy, where gravity curves strange and the stars pulse with old secrets, a salvage crew stumbled upon a derelict ship. It was massive, larger than a dreadnought, darker than unlit void, and entirely adrift. No beacon, no distress signal, just presence. It had appeared overnight, or perhaps it had always been there, hiding in a fold of space-time, too tired to hold it. The crew of the Jax Meridian wasn't picky. They hunted rumors, ghost pings, and long-dead wrecks. They weren't ready for this. The ship didn't match any known civilization, past or present. Its hull was seamless, constructed from an alloy that didn't reflect light so much as absorb it, drink it like it was thirsty. No markings, no numbers, no language, just a spiral, etched in blackened steel at the fore of the ship's central hull. Not raised, not painted, burned into the metal like a memory. It pulsed faintly, once every 7 seconds, like a heartbeat. They docked, slowly, carefully, no resistance. They sent drones. The drones vanished. Still, no resistance. Finally, Captain Day Haver authorized boarding. The boarding team entered through a fracture that looked grown rather than broken. Inside, darkness. Absolute. Not absence of light, but the refusal of light. Then an awakening. Not of systems, not of weapons, but of awareness. Every crew member felt it. A pressure, like being watched by something without eyes. Technicians tried every known protocol. Nothing responded. Scans failed. Equipment glitched. AI went quiet. Then Yola Breen, junior tech, first posting a nervous wreck with a nervous laugh, said, half as a joke, "Hello." The spiral pulsed. The decks beneath them groaned. A subtle vibration thrummed through the air. Monitors flickered. A soft tone, musical but off-key, sounded from deep inside the ship. The ship shifted. Not much. Not menacing. Just very slightly. As if it had been listening all this time. As if now, finally, it chose to answer. They moved the ship, or tried to. Tug haulers with gravitational clamps strained for hours, guiding the derelict into dock at Ardent Station, a multi-species research platform orbiting the black dwarf star Cinder 3. Ardent was a fortress of science and secrets, built to dissect the mysteries of the cosmos. The arrival of the black-spiraled vessel stirred more than curiosity. It ignited obsession. Dozens of species responded to the find. Technopaths from the Venn axis, AI symbiotes from the Trell Unity, psionic tacticians from the Urachnian Chorus. Even a few cautious members of the Galactic Council came in disguise. The ship was unlike anything any of them had seen. Its design defied logic. Interior mapping showed different configurations based on who observed it. 2 drones could walk in side by side and report entirely different blueprints. One saw a spiral stairwell. The other, a hallway full of sealed doors. Neither saw the other. Rooms shifted. Walls bent toward breath. Time ran crooked within its shell. A 10-minute stroll inside became a 2-hour void for one unfortunate probe team, who aged noticeably in minutes. Nothing responded to scans. No weapons. No power cores. No signs of propulsion. What should have been obvious, engines, thrusters, defense systems, simply didn't exist in recognizable form. Some materials registered as unstable particles. Others weren't materials at all, but resonances. And when tools were used, they failed. Cutters fizzled out. Plasma torches sputtered and died. Advanced harmonic drills dissolved into dust. One psionic interface melted in its user's hands. Not in defense, not in aggression. The ship didn't resist. It ignored them. It was not guarded by strength. It was protected by indifference. And yet the spiral pulsed, steady and slow. Once every 7 seconds. Waiting. Researchers debated theories across every discipline. Was it a prison? A relic? A godless temple built for an extinct race? Nothing moved it. Until something did. Not a scientist. Not a general. Not a psychic prodigy. A janitor. Name, Leo Marin. Age, 58. Former engineer turned maintenance worker. Human. Unremarkable. He was assigned to Ardent's lower decks. Empty corridors, storage bays, recycling conduits. The ship had been placed for study in Bay 12, a secured observation chamber with reinforced fields and constant surveillance. Leo was scheduled to mop the adjacent corridor. He wasn't even supposed to be near the vessel. But the station's AI rerouted power that day. Detour signs blinked. Maintenance bots shifted schedules. Leo walked past the ship, humming. Not a song of significance, just something old and human. A tune from Earth's late 20th century, a lullaby about stars and sleep, and something called a silver spoon. The spiral pulsed. Not 7 seconds later. Immediately. Then again. Faster. Sensors inside the observation room spiked off the charts. Lights across the ship's surface flickered in impossible patterns. And then a sound. A deep, resonant harmony. Low. Beautiful. The ship hummed back. Leo stopped. Turned his head. The ship's surface rippled, like wind brushing across still water. Metal flowed. Folded inward. A seam appeared along one side of the hull, right below the spiral. And from that seam, a door formed. Not with gears. Not with hinges. It unfolded. Silently. Elegantly. Like it had always been there, just waiting for the right note. Security panicked. Scientists rushed in. Scanners overloaded. Protocols engaged. But when others tried to approach the open door, it closed. Tightly. Seamlessly. When Leo stepped forward, it opened again, only for him. Inside, lights flickered along the floor. Lines drawn in soft pulses of silver blue led him deeper, into a chamber untouched by time or technology. The ship welcomed him, not with words, not with thoughts, but with understanding. Because Leo, who had lost a son to war, who once designed ships but now fixed floors, who had learned to listen more than speak, didn't try to command it. He just stood there, quiet, curious. And for the first time since the spiral had pulsed in the dark of space, the ship stopped being silent. It began to remember. They took Leo Marin into custody. Not aggressively, not cruelly, but with the quiet intensity reserved for those who had touched something sacred and returned. The council scientists, military advisors, and intelligence liaisons all gathered in Ardent Station's deep conference decks, watching him behind mirror glass. Some of them didn't even believe in coincidence. They thought he'd been planted, programmed, some sleeper agent from some ancient Earth faction. But Leo wasn't special, not by their standards. His record was clean, uneventful. One divorce, one lost child in a civil skirmish back home, one decades-long history of quietly fixing things no one else wanted to touch. Old station AIs, cold pipes, burnout filtration rings, forgotten relics of human engineering. He never asked for much, just tools that worked and time to think. When they asked him what he did to the ship, he shrugged. I was just walking by. I hummed. It hummed back. That was all. When they pressed harder, he shook his head. I don't know how it works. I'm just good with old machines. The council found that deeply unsatisfying. But the ship did not. After the door first opened for Leo, it opened again every time he approached. No others could enter. Not armed guards. Not scientists. Not empaths or analysts. The doorway remained still. Cold. Indifferent. Until he came near. Then it unfolded like a blooming flower of midnight metal. They tried recordings of his voice. Didn't work. They tried DNA samples. No change. They tried neural imprints. Rejected. It wasn't Leo's biology. It was him. His presence. His intention. Because Leo didn't walk toward the ship wanting to control it, to unlock its secrets, or to impress anyone. He just wondered. And the ship answered wonder. When they let him inside again, this time under tight surveillance, something extraordinary began to happen. The inner chambers of the vessel came alive. Not with machinery, with memory. Walls unfolded, revealing layered starlight, projections of galaxies collapsing in silence. Hallways curved into impossible geometries, spiraling not into darkness but into visions. There were no controls, no consoles, only places to stand, to witness. In one chamber, a floor of liquid crystal shimmered with recorded footprints, large, armored, human. Echoes of figures walking with slow purpose beneath the roiling skies of dying systems. Their armor didn't match any known Earth era. Too old, too elegant. Their movements weren't military. They were ceremonial, like monks walking through the end of time. They carried no weapons, just scrolls, staffs, symbols etched into their palms and onto the plating of their suits. And they spoke, not to enemies, but to civilizations on the brink. Each vision showed the same moment, a world unraveling, and a human figure stepping forward, not to command, not to conquer, but to offer words. Soft ones, hard ones, true ones, no threats, no fleets, just presence. The council was stunned. They had thought the ship was human-built, but this was older than any recorded Terran age, older than any known empire, older than Earth's first leap to the stars. This ship, whatever it was, hadn't been made by humanity. It had bonded to them. Long ago, it had waited, not in orbit, not in hiding, in mourning. Mourning a silence it could no longer stand. Leo didn't understand most of what the ship showed him, but he didn't panic. He didn't question it. He simply whispered, "I see you," and that was enough. The projections deepened. He saw the spiral again, this time drawn in stardust across a planetary sea. He saw faces, human faces, ageless, grieving, smiling, and he heard a voice, not in words, but in something deeper. A tone, a truth. The ship was memory, a vessel not of war, but of preservation, built not to fight, but to carry something ancient, something lost, kindness, intention, witness. It had drifted for millennia, waiting not for command, but for companionship. And in Leo Marin, a janitor who didn't ask questions, who simply fixed broken things, it found someone who listened. The council, watching this unfold in real time through shaky drone feeds, sat in stunned silence. What did this mean? If humans didn't build it, why did it wait for them? Why did it answer a man who had no title, no rank, no power? And most importantly, why now? No one had an answer, but the spiral pulsed again. And somewhere inside the ship's core, another door opened. Waiting. Leo Marin didn't want to be famous. But now his name was on every screen across the galactic network, listed not as a scientist or diplomat, but as the one it listens to. He hated the attention. He hated the briefings. He hated being told to keep calm when nothing made sense anymore. Still, he returned, not because they told him to, because the ship waited. When he stepped aboard again, he felt it. Not a welcome, not warmth, but recognition. The way an old room remembers footsteps, or an antique remembers a voice. He didn't walk with purpose. He followed instinct. No one told him where to go, yet the path unfolded. Corridors that hadn't existed the last time now stretched ahead, opening in slow spirals. Light moved with him, not harsh illumination, but soft pulses that faded just ahead like breadcrumbs of memory. He entered a chamber that dwarfed any human cathedral. It was circular, silent. The walls shimmered with crystalline shelves, thousands of them, each glowing faintly. Some pulsed, some were dark, all were locked. Files, he realized, but not digital, not data. These were alive with something deeper. Emotion, memory, echoes. Each one bore a different symbol. None matched known language systems. Yet Leo felt them, like half-remembered songs from a dream. He approached one. The symbol flickered. He reached for it. It remained locked. Another, still locked. He frowned, whispered, "Open." Nothing. Council scientists watching through delayed remote feeds panicked. They begged him to try certain phrases, key codes, diplomatic mantras. He ignored them. He sat, just for a moment, and let the silence speak. Then, softly, without thinking, he asked, "What happened to us? Not to the galaxy, not to the ship, to us, to humanity." The crystal before him pulsed. A hum rippled through the chamber. The file unlocked, and light poured out. It wasn't an image. It was immersion. Leo stood inside it, though his body never moved. A vision took hold. Not a memory he had lived, but one imprinted in the bones of the ship itself. He saw Earth, not as it was, not as it had been, but as something more. Cities without walls. Forests intertwined with song. Machines that grew instead of burned. He saw people, not as rulers or warriors, but as guides, teachers, carriers of story. Humanity hadn't vanished. It had transcended. It had moved inward, beyond war, beyond expansion. They'd realized something that most civilizations never did, that the stars didn't need more empires. They needed witnesses. So humanity let go of conquest, let go of colonies. It left behind relics, not to control, but to remind. Ships like this one, seeds of memory, dormant, waiting not for orders but for intention. The vision faded. Leo staggered. The council erupted in chaos behind their screens. He looked around at the shelves. Now he understood. Each file was a moment, a conflict, a chance humanity had to become something worse, and chose not to. He approached another. This time he asked, "Why did we stop?" It opened. This time, he saw a war that never made it to history. A species had tried to erase another, and humanity had stood between them, not with fleets, but with presence. They showed both sides what they were becoming, and then walked away, not victorious, just present. More questions came to him. Each one opened a story. Each story revealed a truth, that humanity had been watching, listening, choosing restraint when power was possible, because they'd learned, because they'd hurt, because they knew what came next if they didn't. Leo stood there for what felt like hours, opening pieces of what had been lost. And slowly he began to cry, not from sadness, from awe. These weren't just archives. They were proofs of a species that outgrew fear, that outgrew the need to be feared. He turned toward the entrance. The council wanted answers, but he only had one. They didn't leave to escape. He looked up at the shifting lights above. They left to become something better. And now the ship was asking, would anyone else try? The council convened an emergency session before the ship had even finished opening its second chamber. Footage of Leo Marin's quiet revelations caused panic, not because of what he discovered, but because of what it suggested. A ship not powered by code, nor defended by shields, but driven by memory? Worse, by choice. That was more dangerous than any weapon. Unpredictable, untouchable, uncontrollable. Counselors from the dominant species drafted Resolution 8.1.4. Seize, study, and secure. Not to destroy, but to own. Infiltrator teams were dispatched immediately. Each a hand-picked group of commandos, xenoneurologists, and psychic stabilizers. They arrived under the cover of cooperation. Leo wasn't told. The ship knew anyway. It didn't raise alarms, didn't seal its doors. It welcomed them in. And that was the real problem. Because once inside, the intruders began to change. Not physically, not visibly, but perceptually. Each saw something different. Some heard whispers in languages their ancestors had forgotten. Others saw reflections of themselves, wrong, twisted, truer than they'd like. One commander, a veteran of countless planetary purges, screamed inside his helmet. He saw his victims, not as abstract stats, not as enemies, but as families. A child, in particular, always the same eyes, the same reaching hand. He clawed at his own visor until he passed out. Another operative, a scientist, watched her own experiments being reversed in front of her. Every cruel test, every time she claimed greater good, played backward like a moral audit. Her hands red with uncounted guilt. She dropped her datapad and ran. None of the infiltrators made it past the second hallway. Most never even fired a weapon. They simply broke. One tried. A plasma charge. The hallway pulsed softly, and the charge melted in his palm, leaving no burn, no damage, just a profound silence inside his mind that never left. They all fled. Each one returned with a different story. But every story ended the same. It showed me who I was. Back at the station, Leo begged the council to stop. This ship isn't a threat, he pleaded. It's not even defending itself. You're attacking your own fears. They didn't listen. They planned again. Stronger teams. Mental shields. AI drones. Then Leo did something strange. He placed his hand gently on the ship's inner wall and whispered, "Please, make it stop." They're afraid. The ship pulsed once, and everything went quiet. The sensors stopped glitching. The hallucinations ceased. The ship dimmed, peaceful again. Then a voice. Not in any audible frequency, not on any translator feed. Just understood. It spoke through the lights, the walls, the air. A message, printed on nothing, perceived by everyone at once. Kindness is the key. Memory is the lock. Violence resets the test. And with that, all plans changed. Because now the council understood. This wasn't a relic. It was a threshold, a test, not of strength or intelligence, but of character. Every forced entry, every harsh word, every instinct of dominance wasn't resisted by shields. It was reflected by memory, by truth. Some council factions pushed for total destruction, but their weapons malfunctioned near the ship. Others demanded immediate containment, but they feared what it might show them. A few asked, quietly, whether the janitor could try again. Leo said yes, but not to please them. He did it because the ship was waiting for the right questions, and maybe for someone willing to ask them the right way. The ship no longer hid. Where once its surfaces shimmered in unreadable darkness, now they pulsed with starlight, alive with subtle motion, like breath held in chrome. Leo Marin walked its halls like a man drifting through memory. Not his own, humanity's. The ship didn't guide him. It accompanied him. Doors didn't open. They yielded. Lights didn't activate. They acknowledged. In a small chamber near the core, a panel unfolded into air, revealing shapes made of light and tone. Not text, not code. Echoes. Ghosts. The council watched via relay, unsure if they were witnessing history or a dream Earth left behind. One echo stepped forward. Not a hologram. Not a person. Just presence. And it spoke, without voice, without mouth. You are not the first to walk these halls, but you may be the last. Leo swallowed. Who were you? The light shifted, and an entire galaxy spun between them. Slow, deliberate. We were memory. The galaxy in light expanded, each star pulsing with echoes. Not sound, emotion. The memory continued. There was a time, it said, when Earth stood at the axis of intention. We did not conquer. We did not command. We remembered, so others could live. Leo reached toward the starfield. One star blinked and opened like an eye. A scene unfolded, a Terran vessel floating between two warring species. Both fleets locked, missiles primed. No weapons fired. The ship pulsed once, and both sides stopped. The echo narrated. We reminded them of their ancestors, of the songs their children hadn't yet sung. The war ended not in surrender, but in story. The council didn't understand. How could a memory stop war? Leo knew. Somehow he knew. It wasn't control, he whispered. It was reverence. The light turned warm. Yes. The council, watching from orbit, grew restless. This narrative, this myth, it undermined their structures of power. If Terrans had built an empire of memory, where was it now? Leo asked the question aloud. What happened to you? The ship grew silent. Then images. Scorched earth. Not from bombs, but silence. Humanity had vanished from charts, not in defeat, but in decision. The echo answered. We left. Not because we were hunted, because we saw what came next. What came next? Noise. Vanity. Empire. Leo felt a pulse behind his eyes, tears but not grief. Recognition. Another vision. Solar systems shifting orbit to host a single human storyteller. Moons adjusted gravity to let silence fall perfectly for listening. Not because of power, because of care. We didn't lead with weapons, the ship said. We led with wonder. One council diplomat murmured over the feed, "This is dangerous. It seduces." But another whispered, "No, it reminds." Back aboard the ship, Leo came to a chamber unlike the rest. It had no walls, only stars, endless, shifting, and in the center, an empty chair carved of memory itself. The echo spoke again. This was the seat of the listener. Leo didn't sit. He bowed, and the ship pulsed again, brighter than before. On hundreds of council worlds, ancient relics flickered to life. Statues long forgotten, stone carvings of humans in robes, not armor, appeared in temples once thought alien. None had understood the symbols. Until now, they weren't warnings. They were invitations. The janitor was never chosen. He was simply kind, and kindness, whispered the ship, was always the final test. The council convened an emergency session. Half argued to seize the ship, to harness it. The other half, they were quiet, not out of fear, out of memory, because something in the ship's presence unlocked their pasts, not their political careers, not their strategies, their childhoods, their first dreams of stars. And in that chamber, some began to cry. The janitor, Leo, stood alone in the ship's heart. He asked no questions now, only listened. The echo, softer now, said, "This is not the last ship, only the last unanswered. Others? Sleeping, waiting." Throughout the galaxy, Terran vessels lay hidden, not as bombs, but as mirrors, each one bound not to command, but to compassion. One word echoed across every screen. Soon, on the farthest moon of a forgotten system, a child looked up. He saw a light blink, felt a warmth in his chest. He had never heard of Earth, never learned its stories. But that night, he dreamed of a machine made of light, and a man who smiled without reason, humming in a corridor filled with stars. And he awoke singing. Back on the research station, analysts tried to decipher what made Leo special. There was no data, no secret genetics, just one note in a file. Worked 17 years, repaired things others threw away, never missed a day. Once helped a fellow janitor pay for surgery. The lead researcher read the note twice, then whispered, "That's it." The ship pulsed, as if nodding. Galactic news feeds lit up, not with panic, with awe. Old temples reopened. Musicians began composing symphonies based on the ship's harmonic pulses. Poets stopped mid-verse and started over, simpler, gentler. Something had shifted, and not because of invasion, but invitation. Leo walked out of the ship, blinking at the sun. He was no longer anonymous, but he didn't speak to the press, didn't claim leadership. He returned to the janitor's closet, took a mop, and got back to work. Because the test wasn't about being chosen. It was about choosing every day to be decent, even when no one watched. And now, the stars were watching and remembering. On the anniversary of the ship's awakening, something changed. A pulse went out across the stars, not a signal but a feeling. Ships docked and deep space hummed. Navigation panels glowed with unfamiliar constellations. And people across thousands of worlds paused, mid-step, mid-argument, mid-battle, to feel. No words were spoken, but in the mind of every being, from the smallest to the cruelest, one line appeared. "You're still being watched, not judged, just remembered." And in the vacuum between galaxies, more ships stirred. More spirals of blackened steel began to glow. Humanity had not vanished. It had entrusted the galaxy with the truth. The future isn't what you build. It's what you remember. The ship, unnamed, unowned, remained. Not locked, not guarded, just waiting. Some say it sings when no one's around. Others say it shifts subtly, growing younger or older depending on who approaches. The janitor never returned. He didn't need to. The ship had learned enough. The council voted to leave it untouched. Not from fear, from reverence. Across space, stations began treating their workers better. Songs were composed in dialects thought lost. Children were taught that remembering was as important as discovering. And one day, in a quiet hangar, a mechanic paused by a shuttle and whispered, "Hello." The hull pulsed. Softly. Somewhere, the future turned. Final note entered into the galactic archive. The ship did not change us. We changed ourselves because of what it reminded us to be. The file is signed by no one, but it's written in Terran Standard. The council met in silence. The kind of silence that meant decisions had already been made before the meeting even began. This ship, this relic, was more than anomaly now. It was influence. And influence unregulated was danger. So they voted, unanimously, dismantle it. For study, for control, for containment. They didn't tell the public. Just deployed a recovery team cloaked under diplomatic oversight. Engineers, weapons specialists, psychic dampeners. No mistakes this time. At first, the ship didn't react. Its luminous surfaces dimmed as the crews approached. The strange harmonic pulses that once shimmered across its hull faded. Inside, the pathways began folding into themselves. Rooms collapsed inward like dreams ending. No alarms, no resistance, just withdrawal. Then, across every terminal in the facility, from researcher consoles to vending machines, a single phrase appeared. You were not ready. The lights flickered. Air shifted. Not like pressure loss, more like time forgot what speed to run at. The crew attempted to stabilize the field. Grav stabilizers failed. Tools became too heavy to lift or too light to hold. Sound stopped carrying. Screens froze. Then, the janitor collapsed. Leo Marin, quiet, steady, unassuming Leo, fell without a sound in the center of the hangar floor. The ship pulsed, once, and spoke, not with a voice, not through speakers, but everywhere, across star systems, space stations, council chambers, and comets drifting between forgotten planets. Screens lit up, some with static, others with a pulse of color, soft blue-white, all showing the same message. Final protocol initiated. Who do you send to speak for you? No one knew how to answer. Not at first. The council scrambled. Debate exploded into panic. Diplomats fought over access to the feed. Prophets claimed ancient prophecy. Military strategists shouted over one another to deploy suppression drones. It didn't matter, because the ship wasn't listening to them. It had gone quiet again, except for Leo, still lying unconscious but peaceful. His vitals normal, his breath steady, eyes moving behind shut lids like he was dreaming 1,000 years at once. The scientists scanned the ship. It had changed shape again, now a sphere, simple, opaque. Nothing moved. Nothing opened. The team sent drones in. They dissolved. They tried force fields. The room vanished. The council's panic grew louder. They ordered the ship moved off-world, tractor beams locked on. The moment the beams engaged, gravity spiked. Not just in the hangar, across the entire facility. Inverted mass fields dragged metal into spirals. Time warped in pulses, seconds stretched, then collapsed. One engineer, aged 20 years, in 2 minutes. The council revoked the order. Too late. The screens changed again. And now, in every known language, the ship asked again, "Who do you send to speak for you?" Billions saw it. Some ignored it. Others protested. A few wept. Most just stared, as if deep down they knew what it meant. The galaxy was not being attacked. It was being judged. The council called emergency votes. Proposals to send theologians, celebrities, AI minds, council chairs. None of them mattered. Because when one of them, a Zalarian prince bred for diplomacy, approached the ship and said, "I speak for the galaxy," the ship didn't answer. But Leo's body twitched. And across hundreds of outposts, something stranger happened. Children began dreaming of spirals. Mechanics reported broken engines humming songs. Old janitors, sweepers, lunch line cooks started humming the same tune. And the ship glowed again, just slightly, as if smiling. Because someone had already spoken. Someone the ship had chosen before the council even noticed it existed. Not a general, not a priest, not a president. A man who wiped grease off panels and remembered to smile while doing it. Leo Marin. The final screen update appeared in the galactic network. Short, final, and absolute. Only one species has someone we will hear. The janitor wakes slowly, not in pain, but as if rising from an ocean of memory. His body feels light, his mind heavier. Technicians rush to him. Council guards shout, but Leo ignores them all. He walks, not stumbles, not hesitates, straight to the ship. They part like the sea before him. No one dares to stop him. He places a hand on the hull. It hums, and then he speaks, not with grandeur, not with command. Just sorrow. They're scared, he says. They don't know how to be good, but they can learn. Let me help. The ship answers, not in language, in welcome. Lights flood the facility. Gravity resets. Screens flash star maps. The hull begins to reshape like it's breathing. And at the center, a door. Waiting for him. He walks inside, and every locked system across the facility opens. From council war rooms to research vaults, One truth becomes impossible to ignore. He wasn't just accepted, he was expected. The janitor was never random. He was the reminder they'd forgotten to build for. Inside, he finds more than memory. He finds instructions, a network, a lattice of dormant ships, each one linked to an ancient truth humanity once stood for, not power, but preservation. They're scattered across the stars, each guarding a test, each waiting for someone who remembers how to be kind before being clever. Leo sits in the ship's new pilot chamber. There are no controls, just presence. The ship lifts gently. The sky cracks with gold. And on distant moons, inside forgotten nebulae, other ships begin to hum. Not loudly, not violently, just awake. A phrase ripples through long-dead calms, through black holes and ruin worlds. Voice sprint, accepted, and somewhere, deep in the dark, another janitor, on another world, begins to hum. Because this isn't the end. It's the reawakening of memory, of mercy, of humanity's echo. And it's only just begun.